Okie dokie. Hello. Yes. Okay. Welcome to the Friday Hangout stream. We are going to be coding some things today. But first, let me go ahead and jump into the Jitsi channel that I have. Let's see. Ba ba ba. Where did I post the Jitsi chat? There we go. Da, da. All right. And I am joining. Very cool. I'm the only one in this channel right now, but maybe El Public will join soon. Da da da. Let me post a few links just real quickly. Cool. Yeah, sorry for the delay. I was filming a documentary. Things went a little long. But let me go ahead and swap over to the coding view. And we are going to be... I think that I can mute this. I think I'm still fine. Let me see. At one point I will unmute this computer and find out if I'm fine. But last time we created a design for the application, which is laid out here. Can I not zoom in on this? Okay, maybe I can't zoom in on this. So we've got a few things that need to be done to actually load up the application and make it function. So I was thinking that what I'd do is I'd program some hooks to make that work this time. So yeah, that's the plan. So let's go ahead and get some code editors open. Swipe. Okay, so we set up this initial application last time. I also created a few of these initial hooks. And these hooks are going to be what we fill in to actually perform the functions of our application. So let's get coding on them. We'll just start with the first one, create post. Export function, create post. Now, create post will take in, does it need to take in anything? I don't think it does, because you can just create any kind of post. Well, okay, it will take in the thing that's been uploaded. Right, so I need to worry about uploading things. Right. I'm also eating right now, so hopefully that's not too disgusting. This is the mukbang. Like that? No. Oh, thanks for the sauce. Okay. So we'll have a set of posts on the pod. Those posts will upload something. What it is that gets uploaded is going to be a video. So I have to remind myself, how do I do uploading video in React Native? I'm just going to get that up. Get up a previous project to look at on my other screen so that I can remind myself how to upload video in React Native. Hello, second concurrent viewer. How are you doing? Feel free to comment if you want to. Let me also take a look. Am I in? I'm still the only one in the Jitsi room? Yeah. Thank you, Aylin. Okay, so we are getting up github.com a previous app in order for me to remind myself how I do uploads. Here's header dashboard. Actually, I'm going to need a different branch. SRC actions and media actions. Upload. What does this do? Upload individual container. Process.process URL. Create individual raw media. Raw media. Wait. Okay. So at some point I got a file here. Okay. Use create post returns a function, returns a use callback, and then this is the function that we're actually going to be triggering. This function takes in a, what does it take in? Does it take in a URI? No, I think we can generate our own URI. So it takes in a file. And is that just the global file? No. It's the global file. Excuse me. We can also give it a MIME type, which is a string. And then a transaction. Or we could do this a different way. Okay, so should it be UI related? Yeah, it should be UI related. Okay, so we've taken a file and a MIME type. Use callback. Heyo. Hey, Hadrian.
Hello.
How's it going? Welcome to the Hangout. Oh. I might have some headphone problems right now. Okay. Okay, are my headphone problems fixed? Ooh, I don't know. Am I still broadcasting? Hopefully the live stream still hears me. Let me try reloading, seeing if Hadrian can hear me. Hey, can you hear me now? You are muted right now.
Yes, we can hear you, but there is some other voiceover.
There's two voices? Like it's an echo?
With a lot of delay, I think.
Oh, yeah, if you're looking at the live stream, there's a lot of delay. Is that what you mean? And that's just YouTube's thing. So mute the live stream and just use Jitsi. Okay, so this is, this receives a file, and then what we want to do is we want to use LDO to upload the file. So let's get the data set. Oh, Hadrian's gone. And do we have LDO installed here? Oh, Kenneth. How's it going? What's up?
Hey, Jackson. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Welcome to the Hangout.
Yeah. So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, first of all, like, big fan of what you made with LDO.
Oh, thanks.
I'm like new to the community, but I appreciate the effort you put into it because I can see how much easier it made things.
That was the goal. There's a lot of weird crap underneath the hood, but the goal is to make you not able to. You don't have to deal with the weird crap.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that. I mean, it must have had a lot of work got put into that, definitely.
Lots of months put into it, definitely. Yeah. Are you
Definitely.
so you're participating in the hackathon?
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm partnered up with someone called Tim right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we're just doing this like kind of document editing tool on Solid right now.
Very good. What kind of document? Like a Google Docs kind of document, or like raw code files kind of document?
Um, so I can send you kind of like where we kind of gain inspiration from. It's this like product that was like outlined and like a small can you send links in this, by the way?
Yeah, in the Jitsi, you can, and
Okay.
I'm happy to bring it up on my web browser so that the whoa 3 people who are watching right now can see it.
Okay.
I'm a big
Let me
live
pull it up.
streamer,
But
by the way.
I mean all in all, it's just like a no, it's not really like Google Docs. It's kind of like a text editor, but you can bring in import components from your own solid pod that you've made somewhere else.
What do you mean by components? Like web components? Like UI elements, or
Um, I'm not exactly sure how it's going to be lined out, but like um, map to like other values in other areas in your pod. So kind of like importing values from other places within your pod.
that sounds pretty cool. Um, I am creating a transaction data set. Yeah, did you paste the link in? I'd be happy to take a look.
Sure. Sorry, let me just pull it up.
Um, it's a, for code wise, what I'm doing is I'm creating a transaction first, and then I'm going to do everything on that transaction and then commit it all to the pod at once. And for larger things like this create post, it's better to just start a transaction this way. There's also like create data or change data, but that requires you to already have a linked data object that you're working with. So might as well just go from the data set instead of having a linked data object. Cool. And here is the link. Potluck. Let's take a look at that.
Yeah, it's a bit hard to kind of explain, but it is kind of like a dynamic document, essentially, if you want to give that like kind of like a scan.
Very cool. And you already have kind of a professional website going.
Oh, that's not mine. That's not
Oh, okay.
mine. That's we gain inspiration from it. Um,
Oh, I see.
yeah.
Okay. So you've got cool things like you can. Uh, interesting. How do you?
Yeah, I mean that's like the
So
base
are you
idea, but we
like
might.
coding inside of this environment as well?
No, so I didn't make this. This is just something that we thought that was cool.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
But
but yeah, essentially you do code inside the environment,
right.
and it might be a bit ambitious to do exactly what they did,
Yeah, especially
because
because
it
this
is
is a
quite a,
mini hackathon. But hey,
yeah,
might be
exactly.
impressive.
But yeah, I mean, we thought the tool was cool, so um, we thought we could try to replicate this.
Yeah, that's
So
very cool.
yeah. But I am very new to the ecosystem, so still trying to learn.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
Do you have any linked
yeah.
data background?
This is-
How did you hear
no,
about
not
the
really.
Solid
So,
ecosystem too?
um, I think I'm not exactly sure how I landed up on it, but I landed on like the blog, Ruben's website,
Yep. Yep.
Verbo's website, and just reading through it, it got me like interested into the ecosystem, and I've always been interested in data, but this is definitely a new kind of framework to go about data ownership, and this is very recent. Yeah,
That's exciting. Oh, welcome.
thank you.
Thank you for coming in and building things. We need more apps. Need more grassroots apps. There's a lot of I'd say kind of corporate made apps in Solid, but a lot of them aren't necessarily accessible to everyone. So more grassroots apps are going to be exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Actually, one of the questions I wanted to ask is, I mean, you've been in the space for very long, but what's the kind of best use case of Solid you've seen commercially?
Um, it might be it might be biased to say this because this is a project that I've worked on personally. Like specifically in industry, I think that supply chain oriented things lend themselves very well to Solid, especially if it's a supply chain thing that requires a lot of different companies to work together on something because supply chains are very complicated. So at one point, I was contracted to build for a European government a system in Solid that has that lets you connect different companies' supply chains and their carbon emissions, so that you can understand how
Mm.
much carbon emissions you'd have, um, like your product made, given all of the suppliers that have it.
Mm.
It was a proof of concept, um, but was presented at COP, so that was pretty
Yeah,
cool.
no, I think I did. I watched one of the Solid Worlds, and is it the one for like it involves Siemens as well, right?
No, no,
The
this
one.
was a different government.
Oh,
I
it's a
didn't know.
different one.
I didn't know that Siemens was also doing that. So I
I
guess
might be wrong to be honest.
it's
I just
just
can remember the.
I
But yeah,
guess
was
it's
it for like environmental like use
yes,
cases and
yes,
supply chain, right?
for
Okay, that's I mean
carbon
it's probably
tracking
the one.
specifically.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it definitely would be useful in like supply chain as everything is very pretty fragmented. Yeah, fragmented, right?
Hmm. You've got a point where like Amazon, as technically adept as they are, uh, they're still sending PDFs around to all their suppliers,
Mm.
because except for the big ones, which might have a full ERP integration, um, and that's just because you need some kind of interoperability to get all these things to work together, and interoperability is at the center of what Solid is all about.
Definitely, yeah, yeah. I definitely agree that. And like building bridges in between, it's either building bridges or getting everybody to convert onto the same kind of like format, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure which one is the most viable at the moment, but where do you
Well,
see
I
that
mean,
heading?
the web did it basically. Um,
Hmm,
it forced everyone to go on to basically the same format. So that's what we're trying to replicate here.
that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Hey, Felipe.
No, hi, sorry, Jackson.
Oh, sorry.
Could I ask you one
Oh
question, by
yeah,
the
yeah.
way?
Go
I
ahead.
just yeah, I was just wondering where did kind of you start from? Did you start from a more like developer background, and how did you get more into Solid? I want to know
Yeah,
like more about your backstory as well.
yeah.
I mean, you've been in yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. I came from a developer background, not an academic background. I only have a bachelor's degree. I don't have like you look at a lot of the people who are working in Solid and they've got PhDs and stuff because they come from the academic background. Um, but yeah, I was back in 2018 or so. I was working at a marketing analytics company, and I just decided,
Mm,
nah, I don't want to do marketing analytics, but I do like the organization of data. And there was an article, and before that, while I was in college, I took a class where my final paper in that class was talking about the semantic web and how it would never work. So I was already aware of the
mm,
semantic web, and aware of the problems that it had. But when I was working for that marketing analytics company, I just didn't want to do that anymore. So I said, you know what? I like pure data. Let's do something with the semantic web. Um, and what I did was I said, I don't know anyone in the semantic web industry. I went to Georgia Tech and I was in Georgia at the time. Really, like, semantic web industry is mostly Europe, to be honest. So
mm.
it's so I didn't know anyone in the industry. So my solution was I still had access to my Georgia Tech email, even though I had graduated. So I
Yeah.
used that to pretend I was with Georgia Tech and submitted poster papers to a few
Wow.
conferences, to two conferences, the Dublin Core Metadata Initiative conference and then the International Semantic Web Conference. And if you're familiar with conferences, then you'll know that they basically accept all poster papers, like as long as it's not actively uh, calling out the good name of the conference owners themselves, then they'll accept it. So I got in and went to those conferences, and at ISWC, at the International Semantic Web Conference, this was, yeah, I think it was ISWC 2018. Um, I There was a presentation on Solid, and Tim was at that presentation. I actually ran into Tim before going to the presentation. He asked, like, where is the presentation? And I said, I'm going to that same thing, and I'll
Oh wow.
walk there. And I didn't know that it was Tim until people started like referring to him deferentially. Um, and But I really like the concept of Solid because I already wanted to do semantic web stuff, and a few of the like in that original essay that I talked about the original failures of the semantic web, I said one of the big problems is this is all public data, right? There's so much private data that exists, and that's one of the main things that Solid solves. Um, it also has problems in terms of interoperability, but that's something that I'm trying to solve, I guess, right now. But anyway, I liked Solid because of that. I liked it because it provided an authentication layer to the semantic web, and I talked to Ruben Verbal because he also was giving the presentation. Got his contact information and said, "Hey, I want to start building stuff on this." So when I got back from the conference, I started looking into the Solid spec, and there were a lot of things I didn't like. One of them being something that still isn't solved, which is no search, or like no efficient form of search. But I started building something that I called Solid Plus Plus, which was a spec of like, this is my dream spec for Solid, and I built part of a server for it, and I sent it out to Ruben, and Ruben said, "Hey, they're forming a company. Tim's forming a company called Inrupt to work on Solid. Would you like to join?" And I said, "Yeah." And actually, that initial server that I built forms the authentication layer that is in CSS right now.
Oh wow. Yeah.
So
Didn't know.
there's a little bit of that server that still exists. But yeah, because at the time, CSS, the community Solid server, didn't exist. It was only the Node Solid server, and there had been discussions of like replacing it. So I was hired on partially as a heel to just maintain NSS and the data browser, which is one of the worst code bases that I've ever encountered. But yeah,
I
worked at
see.
Inrupt for a year and a half, and then went independent after that.
And more into open source, I'm guessing, yeah.
Yes, or I
As you are
still do
now.
closed source stuff because,
Hmm.
to be honest, I'm living in some of the most expensive cities in the United States. It's not cheap. So
So where are you in the US right now?
right now I'm in Philadelphia, which is not necessarily the most expensive city in the U.S., but I've been hopping around for a new city every year. So
Nice.
I've been in D.C. and New York and San Francisco. Um, so it's been a bit of a wild ride, but yeah, I still do closed source stuff because it pays a bit more than the open source stuff. But the
Yeah.
open source stuff is the more exciting things to me.
Definitely. Yeah, yeah. It's more like passion driven, right?
Yeah,
And like goodness of the community.
and the great thing about dev tools is that if you build a dev tool and it makes it easier for you to build things, then that just makes it easier for me to build the closed source stuff. Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it like in addition to that, it helps everyone else as well. Definitely. Yeah, I mean, I was also looking to kind of get some tips as I'm kind of like starting from zero in terms of Solid. So would you think is the best place to start other than like
Well,
LDO, obviously?
yeah, you've obviously seen the LDO documentation. Um, the best way to understand like what are your goals? Are your goals to just like build solid applications? Do you want to get involved in building new features for Solid that solve problems? Um, or like
Yeah,
where do you
probably more like Yeah, probably more on the feature side. I don't think my interests lie in kind of creating dev tools.
Hmm.
I know like dev tools is the big thing right now, and a lot of the apps I do see are more dev tool oriented. But probably going more into like features and so like people other than devs can utilize the technology as well.
Got it. So you want to build
Yeah, I'd say.
user-facing applications,
Yeah,
which
yeah, that's
which
where kind of my interests lie in more.
which is definitely something that
But
we
yeah, you still
run
need to
into.
understand the technology at the end of the day, right? With
Yeah. Do you
doing
want
that.
to have so are you looking more into um, like more just doing things at a hobbyist level and having like here are some cool apps at a hobbyist level, or like do you want to go hard into like this is a big open source project that I hope to be supported, or maybe like here's a company that has a business model that's built on top of Solid.
Yeah, probably like the second option. I am pretty I do quite believe in the mission. Obviously it's gonna be hard to get there. There's a lot of kind of like barriers in the way, definitely. But yeah, I'm hopeful to get there one day, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, so for like the big open source projects, I think that it's mostly about um, it is a lot of marketing in it. Like you have to find a good audience of things, and I know this as someone who isn't great at marketing. Like I had Liquid Chat before, which has been decaying a bit over time. Um, Liquid,
Yeah, no, I just like
yeah.
checked it out. I just signed on today because I was kind of like looking around.
Nice. We'll see if
Uh,
the notification server is still working. You can try to chat with me and see if I get a notification. I don't know. I have not
sure, yeah.
updated Liquid Chat in like 2 years,
Let's see.
but the server's still running, so
Hmm.
it's working. The but like it doesn't have a ton of users because I didn't do a great job promoting it. But so there was a chat. Elf Pavlik, were you the one who gave me a link to a talk about maintaining your open source projects? Was that you? Uh, d-
I don't think so.
no, I think it was Noel.
At least I don't recall.
Yeah, I think it was Noel de Martin who sent it to me. Um, let's see. Yeah, here it is. I'll paste a link in the Jitsi chat. Here we go. This was I think a pretty good talk at FOSDEM about like how the need for uh, like doing marketing and having to make your open source project thrive, because you need to have a lot of users in order to make your
Hmm.
open source project thrive. So even though it's open
Definitely.
source, you still need like a business plan, right? Um, you you need to have the ability to um, find people who are using your product and then using it, even if it's being used for free. And I mean to be a little bit cheeky about it, this hackathon is a little bit part of the quote unquote business plan for LDO. Um, just like I want more people to use LDO, and
Yeah,
by
that makes sense.
providing it open and then saying, oh, we got to get more people to build apps, whether they're using LDO or not. Um, that's going to help lift the user base of LDO.
Yeah, yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. That's what most hackathons push as well, right? Using the technology and seeing where people can innovate within the technology as well.
Yeah. So having a business plan, like some kind of plan, an open source plan for your product, I think is going to be the number one thing that leads to success. And then, of course, from a technical side, I'm able to provide a lot more tips on that, right? Because I can just say any problem that you're experiencing problems with interoperability, experiencing problems with query. Here are the limitations of Solid. Here are the things that I'd like to change about Solid. And of course, I could give any kind of advice about that.
See, yeah, just one more question. What do you think is the biggest kind of barrier to like public adoption? Do you see?
I mean, I'd say that it's probably consumer apathy. like when I got into the
Consumer what? Sorry.
consumer apathy to the
Oh,
problems that
apathy. Okay.
Solid is solving. Like when I heard about Solid and really got into it, I was like, wow, this is so great. We are going to transform the world of computing, and we are going to, because everyone, because it sucks. Like Google owns all the data and Facebook owns all the data. It would be great to own my own data, and it would just be pure from a computing standpoint. And then you look at the way that markets go, and consumers don't really care about that. So that means that there are problems for adoption. But I've changed my tune a little bit, and I don't. It's about and the way that I see Solid being successful is not necessarily through consumers. Consumers like abstractly want to have apps that let them own their own data, but they more want to have an app that's easy to use and always online. And unfortunately, Google has a lot more money than us to develop well-maintained apps.
Definitely.
But the thing that makes me excited is that it's not just consumers that abstractly want this. Governments really want it, especially European governments, because they see the threat of American massive multinational corporations and what that does for their citizens' data. And they want to be able to protect their citizens by giving the citizens power over that data. So as we go, so I've come to say that to think that Solid conceptually, like at a massive scale, it will live or die by the regulators' hands. And I am cheering on the regulators who want to support this fight for consumer ownership over like massive American corporation ownership. So that's why things like the Athumi, the Belgian data utility, are so exciting. And as Europe develops more standards, I see this as being the main in for Solid. Just
Yeah, I mean,
because
it's probably going to take a while before it kind of comes to the US. At this point, right?
But it could.
They might, yeah. I mean, they might want to like see it work in Europe first
Like
before even consider it, right?
we've seen the California Privacy Protection Act, I think it is, which is modeled after GDPR. One's in Colorado. So the Europe is blazing the way for this to happen, and then the U.S. could follow after it. And actually, we are looking at a world where U.S. regulators are not being as much of pushovers towards large tech companies as they have in the past. Just this week, a massive antitrust suit has been filed against Apple. So the tune is changing a little bit. We might be in like just the right time for Solid to take off because of the regulatory environment we're going into. Now, all of this is just my opinion. I'm sure that everyone here also has other ideas of what the future of Solid is, but that's just me giving my like 2 cents on it.
I totally agree with you that it's going to be about public money and public regulation. Definitely. I mean,
Yeah, and through the public, they kind of push it as like kind of a law, but you like recommend it like a recommendation, right? Oh, let's say like, oh, if you want to change over to digital IDs instead of physical, it's kind of something that the government would push instead of like letting the users kind of choose independently in that way, right? So there is like governmental kind of pressure to adopt it as well, which is always helpful in user adoption.
but it has to be pushed in. It has to be enforced by the government, and in this case by Europe. I'm sorry, I'm speaking. I didn't even introduce.
No,
myself.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
No,
This
it's
is
a
just general chat.
Yeah, I'm living in Belgium, and I've been working for the past few years, for instance, with Atumi on Solid. So I've seen a bit from the inside how it's going at the moment. And what's happening at the moment is that, I mean, even Atumi is funded partly by public money, but it's still a for-profit company. And the problem is that all the major companies that exist today, they more or less have a business that's built on owning the user's data. So they don't want something like Solid. And so waiting for private money to push Solid forward, that's not going to happen. I mean, that's just it's just my opinion. But what I've seen is that the few private companies that I've seen that try to do that, apart from Interrupt and Atumi, which are the first, I would say, pure players, but usually what they try to do is corrupt Solid to gain even more control over the user's data, but they do not adopt the spirit of Solid. And I think that only public money and forced regulation will make that happen. But that's just how I feel it from the inside of Europe and from Belgium at the moment.
Yeah, thanks. I definitely agree with both of you guys too. I've been doing a little bit of work with some groups in Portland, Oregon, and I will say, Jackson, Philippe, the United States is definitely not nearly as far along on this as Europe is, but there is interest in some public groups in the United States like NIST and simply just standardizing how data interchange happens across government agencies. Because right now, in the US, like we all have, every single city will set up their own little department or their own little office, their own little database that they paid for, that they bought from some closed source, cheap, low-skilled private entity. And so the private entity effectively owns any, like all the data that's stored in those community databases. And there are groups in the U.S. government, like NIST, who are trying to push away from that model and trying to get a model where things are moving back and forth, where citizens can move their data from place to place, and where even just the civic governments themselves can move their data from place to place. It's definitely still 5 years away, 10 years away from any real change, but it is something that a protocol like Solid is what they would need to implement to achieve that goal, no matter what.
Tim, do you do work with government entities?
I've been doing some volunteer work for a civic group in the area and there are a few people involved in that who work directly with NIST and with like the Oregon government.
That's pretty cool.
They do work with government entities.
So I'm guessing you're out of Oregon.
I'm out of Portland, Oregon.
And are you the Tim that is working with Kenneth?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Sorry,
right. Yeah.
Working together.
Yeah. No, we just connected online, and yeah.
I'm sorry, Kenneth. I've been pretty busy this week, so
Yeah, no, it's all good. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah, this is I guess compared to the Interrupt hackathons, this is a relatively low stakes hackathon, so no worries on it. I gotta. We'll see if I can even complete my TikTok clone.
Hey, half finished, half baked out. Just makes it more likely that we'll win. So. Not at all.
Well, I'm not even allowed to compete, so it has no effect. Yeah.
I mean, you're still creating a nice like social app, so it's definitely good for everyone to kind of reference to, right?
We'll see. Well, if I implement this properly, I am afraid that I am going to end up overstressing a lot of Solid servers with streaming video. Because CSS does have the headers to support streaming video, but we'll see if like solidweb.org can hold up against all of that.
Yeah, I don't. CSS is definitely not an enterprise grade server.
No. Well, I mean, depends on who you ask. The Digita.ai has a fork of CSS that they're using for enterprise purposes, and they claim that it's enterprise ready. So
yeah, they modified it quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you significantly modify a server to make it enterprise grade, it'll probably be enterprise grade.
just want to ask for like US based, are there any kind of like in-person events that like Solid does?
Man, there
or, like,
used
regularly does?
there used to be before the pandemic. Like we had some events up in Boston. That
I'm currently in Boston actually right
Oh,
now.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had events in Boston. We had just like at the Inrupt office or the Gennaro Digital office as it was. I don't know if there's any during the since the pandemic. Like the event that a few solid people have shown up for in the U.S. has been DWebCamp. Here, let me swap back to this coding view. So DWebCamp. So Tim has been generally likes going to DWebCamp. I don't know if he's going this year. There have been some other people from Solid at DWebCamp. This is more of like a general week-long camp about decentralized web stuff, not just Solid, but Solid has had a decent representation at it. I unfortunately can't go this year. I've got a conflict this year, but I'll be planning on going a subsequent year. This is put on by the
it
Internet
looks very
Archive.
like retreat like. It looks very like
it's
like a
very
mindfulness camp.
So
Yeah.
yeah, the story behind it is, so the guy who runs the Internet Archive, like the chief librarian of the Internet Archive, is a guy named Bruce, and his claim to fame, like his claim to his fortune, is he sold Alexa to Amazon. Now in the 90s, Alexa, not the voice like home speaker thing. At the time, Alexa was a website that was called the Alexa Score, which kind of scored the popularity of different websites. Anyway, he sold that to Amazon in the 90s for like $100 million in Amazon stock or something, and you can imagine what that has accrued into now. So he's got a ton of money to run the Internet Archive, and then he went to a retreat in Germany and said, "Hey, let's do that too, but for decentralized web stuff." And the very first DWebCamp was in the middle of nowhere on the California coast. It was so remote that it couldn't have internet on it, and the solution to that was they built cell towers. They built arrays of cell towers to go out to this location in order to in order to provide an internet connection, and Bruce footed the bill for that. So
Wow.
it's a very eclectic group.
Definitely. Yeah. Wow. No, that's an interesting story. Definitely. Building cell towers just because there weren't any nearby.
Yeah. Last year we tried turning off the internet in order to use Holochain, which is a decentralized standard, and it didn't go well because apparently there are mobile firewalls that don't like Holochain, but still it was an attempt. Yeah.
You said Holochain, like
Yeah.
CHAIN?
HOLOCHAIN. Yep. Funnily enough, not a blockchain. It just has chain in its name. I think that it was founded back when blockchains were really popular and would give you a lot more value, so they just pretended to be a blockchain. But it is not a blockchain. It says delivers beyond the promises of blockchain.
Yeah, no, I'll check it out, definitely.
It's a peer-to-peer network supported by a distributed hash table, which I at one point want to work on distributed hash tables to help search in Solid. I think that there's a lot of potential there, but that's
search in Solid like. I think there's a bit of a delay, but is search in Solid like similar to like querying in Solid? Is that like very close or the same thing? Or?
Yeah, there are things that you can do right now. The best thing that I'd recommend is something called Communica, and I will paste this in. So Communica is a project out of Ugent. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Correct me if I'm wrong, Felipe. Ugent.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, very good. It is. So this is a client-side query library. So you can define Sparkle queries, and then you define the sources that you want to search, and then it'll search across those sources. The difficulty with this is you really can't get a lot of the efficiency from like properly optimized indices with this, which is what makes searching fast. Because what you're doing is Communica is going to solid pods and just getting all of the files and then searching over those files on the client. So from a search efficiency standpoint, it doesn't give you any kind of benefit than what you would do if you were doing like just the brute force technique. But it provides you with an easier interface for doing it because you can just give it Sparkle queries. There was a meeting, a workshop on different approaches to search. And some of the interesting ones that came up are in that workshop is espresso. Let me see if I can find it. University of Southampton. Yes, here we go.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't know what that is. I'm pretty new to the system, so
Yeah.
I'm like willing to explore it if you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking it up right now, trying to find. I'm getting like the grant page. Espresso solid query. I'm trying to remember the name of.
Jackson, while you look for it, there
I've
will
got
be
the
meeting
paper.
with Solid practitioners about the indexing and search. I think it will be next Monday. I posted in the Hackathon Matrix channel.
Okay, I'll be sure to come to that practitioners meeting because I am definitely. Oh no, I'm sorry. I can't go to that one because I'm filming a documentary at that time.
And also, I know Indra in France, they do some work on the indexing. Maxime, I think he worked with Pirantu1, was doing some demos of actually some search using indexes and kind of, they have some also like benchmarks for comparing like with and without indexes, like how those indexes are improving their search. And I think they also like did some ontology for actually, like defining those indexes.
Yeah. If anyone cares about my personal opinion about this search, I think that after going through all of these techniques, I still think that they're inadequate for what Solid needs. In fact, I'm actually going to the Espresso team is hosting a workshop in July in London, and I'll be going there and presenting the alternative that I think needs to be done for search, which is a lot less peer-to-peer. We got to stop thinking of search as a peer-to-peer problem and thinking it of how do we centralize search in the right places. Because I think that a lot of people in the decentralized community, in Solid community, have this obsession with like, let's be sure to split things up and we'll make things peer-to-peer. But when it comes to search, you can't get over the fact that a network call might be measured in milliseconds, but a call to RAM will be measured in nanoseconds or microseconds. So centralizing it as much on one machine is always going to yield faster results.
Yeah, and also to Elf's point, the solid practitioners did have a separate meeting on search back in February.
Yes, I think I attended that meeting.
What do you think, Jackson, to get back on your code base? I'm quite curious how you will wrangle LDO objects and datasets.
All right, yeah, okay, so all right, the problem that I'm dealing with right now is when I want to create a post, I'm wondering where do I put this post? And Elpavlik, without your SCI, I don't know that. But this isn't a SCI project, so I need to have something that's going to be able to create my post. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm just going to say that, hey, by default, we're just going to put them into folders that I create. So I'm before I can get into the like use create post method, I need to use LDO to find the root folder and then create a arbitrary folder inside of that I'm going to put all my posts in. So let me.
Isn't it what you want to advertise as an outbox using activity pump
Exactly.
terminology?
Yep.
Okay.
So we are going to be setting up the outbox. And you know what? I actually don't need this main containers. I need to create post, load feed, find person, load feed, prepare profile on initial load. So this is going to be the one that I should be programming first. Use. And don't let me, if you have any more questions or you wanted to talk with each other about stuff and your projects, feel free to do that too. But I can also just give commentary as I'm doing this. So okay, so this isn't an LDO related thing. This is just a React related thing. I created this hook just so that the logic is separated from the React itself. I will program the UI later, but this hook is just going to return a function that I can call. In fact, actually, it doesn't need to be a function. It needs to be a use effect, because this should trigger on load and only once on load. So we'll do that. And what this is going to take in is we are going to use LDO to get the global data set. This is the global data set for the application. And then the data set is going to be a... so we are going to use the data set, and we are also going to get the web ID from use solid auth. And we get the session there. Right, so this will trigger when there is a web ID. So as soon as you log in, it will trigger. We want this to trigger every time the web ID changes, because let's say I log out and I log back in as someone else, we want to do this again for the file. And we want to be sure that the web ID exists. So now I have the web ID. Next, we are going to load the profile, and we can do that by just saying, we can also include some of these helper methods like get resource from use LDO. Profile resource, and then say get resource, and we'll pass in the web ID. So what this is going to do is it gives us the resource, but it doesn't actually load the resource. For that, we're going to want to perform an await profile resource dot read. So that's actually going to read the resource, and this needs to be asynchronous. Oh, that's right.
Jackson, I started using the solid LDO package today. Before I just used the raw LDO LDO. And what's what additionally the React get resource does do? Does it only just call the dataset solid LDO dataset get resource, or
exactly? This is just a shorthand for basically dataset.get resource.
All right, cool. Thanks.
So it's the same thing. There's a lot of shorthand things in here, except like you might see one thing is like you'll see something like use subject. That's something that actually isn't just a shorthand. That has extra things in it that re-renders the stuff. But most of the other things are just shorthands.
Cool. As you code, if you can at some point, if you notice that you do something that it's different from the solid LDO under it would be great to when you mention the differences.
Absolutely. Yeah, you'll have a pretty good grasp of it if you are already familiar with solid LDO. React LDO doesn't add a whole bunch of stuff. It's mostly that re-rendering that happens with the use subject. But yeah, so we've got a result. That result is potentially an error. So we need to handle that error in some way. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kick that down the road, and we'll have like what we'll do is I'll just give that error to a regular, to some kind of display error function that I'll program down the road, and this will like pop up a toast message. And I remember last time we talked, Alpha Pavlik, you asked what was the thought process behind instead of something throwing an error, the result could potentially be an error, so it returns an error. And if anyone else is interested, it's because this is I hate JavaScript's error handling system. You never know what the error being thrown is. So this lets you do TypeScript enforced error handling. So for example, here I know that result is an error, and because of that, I know which kinds of errors read throws. So you can see these are all the different kinds of errors that read could throw. It could throw a non-compliant error, server error, authentication error, authorization error, unexpected error, HTTP error, or an unexpected resource error. And each of these have different properties on them. It just, in my opinion, makes things easier to do error handling. The thing that it doesn't make it easier to do is if you want to ignore errors and just brush them under the rug, because you actually do have to handle them. But I think that that's a little bit of a benefit rather than a drawback. So I'll do display error.
I think when we were talking about it, I mentioned that I plan to add sentry to track the errors. So I understand since you have to handle it, you also have like manually call your tracker to report the error to the tracking service.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Yes, are you familiar with something like Sentry that tracks errors that you can report them to like an online bug error tracker? For example, Sentry.io is a popular open source solution for that.
Got it.
So one of the default approaches is like any unhandled error will be reported.
Mm-hmm.
But since you are handling them, probably your handling would need to involve a step of also reporting that error to the tracker, which is not complicated, but it's I think a little difference from what people may expect to do using those kind of technologies.
If you're really lazy, what you could do is just say if is error, just throw result. You could do that, and then that would handle it like it gets bubbled up.
Or in your display error, like at this moment, if you just want to show them because you assume it's mostly for developers, you can just probably in the function to display it, you can at the same time like send it out to the tracker and centralize it in one place.
Yeah. Exactly. This will be a void. Cool. So we've got display error. So we're going to display result. Cool. And yeah, So actually, we also want to return because we don't want this to continue. Then, so we've just read the document. Now that we've read the document, we want to get the subject of the document. So get a linked data object that is the subject of the document. So create, let's see, say it's a profile, and then get subject. Also, you'll notice that I'm not putting the get resource and get subject inside of this, which is like the dependencies method. It doesn't matter if you do it. Get resource and get subject will be static throughout the entire application. So there's no need to put it inside of the dependencies for this effect, if you're familiar with how React works. So we're going to get the subject, which fortunately is the same as the WebID document that we've received. But we also need a solid profile, which I believe that I have already included in shapes. Yep, I've already included the profile. So what is it called? It is called a solid profile shape type. Gotta love those generated names. Import from LDO / profile shape types. Oh, also, am I too zoomed out? Is that a little bit easier to read? Oh, I guess I'm not necessarily. Wait, actually, Alpha Pavlik, is this like a little bit of a disjointed thing to see? Should I be sharing my screen in the Jitsi?
Well, I mean, you probably will, if your bandwidth and computer can encode both, you could do that, but I'm okay. It's maybe 2 seconds delay, 2-3 seconds. For me, it's manageable.
Okay, so yeah, so I'm cool. So we're going to get the solid profile check shape type, which tells us that this subject, this session.webid, is a solid profile shape. But actually, I don't care that it's a solid profile shape. What I actually care about it is that it is an ActivityPub person. Person shape type. Yeah. So let's update this to be ActivityPub shape types, person shape type. Okay. So this profile is a person, and I want to see, does that person have a have an outbox? Does that person have a what were all the things that we said last time? We said outbox, following, and a person type. Yep. Is a person type, has an outbox, and has a following. So if the person dot outbox, if not that, then we do something here. Or sorry, if not person dot type, which should be an array. Yes, it's an array. Dot something in the array has a where the value.id is person. Okay, so if it doesn't have a type of person, then we need to add it. Um, and what we can do is actually, instead of using get
The
subject,
value or type?
huh?
Person.
So
Why is it val ID?
so this is just the value of the type field. The type field is an array of these objects that have IDs of object or person. Yeah, so we're checking to see if the type, if one of these types is person, because it could have many different types. It could be a more specific person, but we just care that one of these types is person.
Okay, I see. So yeah, since it's an IRI, just from the JSON LD kind of data types and so on, we need to have the at ID instead of just a string. Okay, I get it.
And JSON LD does support us skipping that ID. Like we can have, we could have
type
this,
at ID,
right?
At type.
But LDO, I decided purposely to make LDO not support it. LDO used to support that, but it got into a lot of confusion over like what is an object versus what is a string, and it just felt confusing for the developer. There, like how would I define that this thing is an object versus this thing is a string, and how do I keep that consistent? So just for consistency, we're saying that you will always use the ID field for objects, even though it is possible for you to use just the string for an ID.
You mean for objects or for IRIs?
Yeah, for nodes.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, so we're doing this. I'm actually going to swap this out for, we're going to start a transaction. So we'll use dataset dot start transaction, and I'm going to, or actually we want to do dataset. Yeah. Dataset dot start transaction, and now we are going to, instead of person, we're going to do a person that is writable, because technically this get subject, the person won't be writable. So we'll do dataset dot, or sorry, we'll do the transaction dataset dot using type of person shape type dot write.
Is there a Is there a difference between doing that or calling the change data helper?
Yes. The difference is that I don't have the change data requires you to already have a linked data object, which is useful if I like somewhere else in my React application I use the like use subject, then I could just put in a linked data object that is already that already exists, and that would turn it into a writable linked data object. However, in this case, I don't already have a writable linked data object, so might as well just do it this way.
Okay, I get
Hopefully
it.
that makes sense. Cool. And we're writing to the session web ID. We are saying from subject the session web ID. Okay, so this is going to give us a person that is writable, and now we can do person dot type dot push, and we are going to push a ID is person. Okay, so that'll take care of our first one. Now, if we if we don't have an outbox, then we want to both create an outbox, and we want to handle, and we want to add that to the profile. And this is why transactions are so good, because what I can do is I can use the write method from LDO itself, and I could actually use write to some kind of outbox. Well, actually, first our question is, where are we putting the outbox? Like, what's the folder we're putting the outbox in? What's the file we're putting the outbox in? Let's say that it is...
I think random ID, no?
Yeah, we could just put it in a random ID. You're right. So UUID. Let's install UUID.
Actually, both Node and browsers have a random UUID function. In Node, you can import it from crypto, and browsers have the crypto dot random UUID, and it's UUID v4 just native in Node and the browser.
Oh, interesting. Let's see. This is... I wonder if that is available in React Native. I'm not sure. But I'll just continue to use UUID because I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, I have no idea about React Native, so probably it's safer to use the package.
Types / there we go. Okay, so we will now create. So first we'll create the file, and what we can do for this is we can say that we have a outbox, and in the exact same way we did this one before, we can say using type. I believe it is a ordered collection shape. That needs to be the outbox, and then this is specifically, this outbox is going to be written to some web ID, some resource. So first of all, we got to get the URI for that, and we get that by getting the root URI. Let's just get the root URI. Root container.
Yeah, I think it's okay for this case, but for example, there's no requirement that the web ID is in the solid storage. For example, my web ID is not in the solid storage. If I would have used it, so one of the ways that people advertise the PIMs or space storage depends on the prefix, kind of they use it, but sometimes people just publish the link to the storage in the web ID.
So what do you think would be the best place to put this if they don't have it?
No. So I'm saying, instead of assuming that the web ID it's in the storage and just finding the root, probably the safe. I mean, you could do probably both. Try if there's the PIM storage predicate in the web ID profile,
right?
And if it is, maybe multiple ones, just pick a random one, or later you can improve it to prompt the user like, hey, where do you want to add your outbox to, which of the storages? And then if that fails, try to see if you can find the root of the storage from the web ID. But I think it's probably like as a to-do for later, because you just complicated the whole flow with trying different ways of doing that.
Yeah, and that seems like that's something I need to add as a feature to LDO rather this application. Just a nice thing that uses PIM storage.
Yeah. And again, it will also not work with SCI, because in SCI we don't advertise. You need to go to authorization agent and first get authorization to do something like that. So it's another topic.
Yeah. So we can do, after we load the profile, or actually it could be at the same time as we load the profile. I could do a promise.all profile.read. It's going to be a read result. and a root result. So
if you like, I can create the issue for you in LDO
yeah,
to add
that
the
would
Vim
be
storage.
that would be nice.
All right, I'll do it.
Root container. Okay, so we're getting both the root container and the read container, and now we'll say read result dot is error, then read result if root result dot is error. Okay, so at this point, root result will be a container, so I can get it from URI. So we're going to want to make a child of that container. Outbox resource. That's going to be a child of the root result, and by doing child, that's going to get us the child as long as we pass in a slug, which we can get by just generating a random ID. So this is our resource. So now the outbox itself, we're going to write it to the outbox resource, and we are going to create a new ID for this. Wait, actually, outbox resource dot URI, because it's a string, and then we're going to create a new ID, which says outbox resource dot URI, but we don't want to make it the same as the resource itself. So we're actually going to give a little octothorpe on this, and we could generate a new thing here. So now we've got outbox. So that's the ID of outbox. So let's set up outbox. So outbox has a type, which is outbox type is also an array. So we'll say that it is an array where its ID is a ordered collection. And then outbox has, what else does it have? Let me go into outbox's types. So an ordered collection has a type, has an attachment, audience, content, context name, end time, generator, icon, location, preview, replies, start time, tag, okay. It has items. Okay, we don't need anything in this outbox yet because nothing's been added to it, but we will be adding to this outbox later. And then we want to say person. Keep in mind that person is being written to the web ID. So anything that is, any changes to person is going to be written to the web ID. So I can even do person.outbox equals outbox. And even though the outbox itself is being written to the outbox resource, this change, this triple, is going to go to the web ID because it's modifying person. So that's how you can do like things across multiple resources. So we created an outbox, and we're going to do basic.
Okay, I see. So when you create it from the data, it will just have at ID, because that's what's only available
Exactly.
in the data for the web ID profile. But later you can just link them together and actually have that reference to the what LDO will do under the hood.
So
if you do something like that.
Right. So under the hood, it's all just one data set, and it is it doesn't, like, if I'm doing like person.outbox dot I don't know, content, sure, if I'm doing this, then expected an assignment or okay, that's not a problem. If I'm doing this, then it's not going to care what document it was fetched from. If I had fetched both documents and they're in the central data source, then it's going to be fine with jumping between these things because it doesn't look at the graph. It only looks at the graph for when you're doing write operations, but for get operations, it doesn't care about the graph. So that makes it very convenient.
I guess so. If, for example, assuming that they were existing already before, if I fetch first the web ID document, when I access Outbox, it will only have @ID. But then when I fetch to the same solid LDO dataset, when I fetch the Outbox, and I again do the person.outbox, now it will have not only @ID, it will automatically have all the other data that is in the dataset.
Exactly. Yep.
And does it trigger any events? Like, would it kind of look like the person outbox has changed, even that you just fetch it independently?
Yeah. So if we're using like use subject in React, and let's say somewhere in my React object I have like person dot, or let's pretend that this is in a render method, person dot outbox dot items or something like that.
Just outbox maybe for now. Like you would have if person outbox showed like a has outbox or something without like getting any data from underneath.
So I mean, like if I'm rendering it, I could render person outbox @ID. But if I haven't fetched the outbox, I can't render the other thing. But what can happen is, like, let's say I say person.outbox.items. Now, items may or may not exist. I might not have fetched it. But let's say I said items of like 0 dot or sorry, items question mark dot 0 dot name. Sure. This right here, the first time it renders without the outbox, it will go through here and say items, that's nothing. But it will remember that this component tried to render items. So if we then later fetch outbox and items comes in, that has affected this. And that will tell LDO, hey, this needs to be re-rendered because it initially looked at the items, saw that items was null, and then rendered it one way. But now it needs to re-render it because items is no longer null. Items has changed. And then it could re-render it by showing the name. So that's how, and that's a part of the React solid stuff.
Is that a part of the tracking something class?
Exactly. Yep. So.
Okay. All right. Thanks. That's really neat.
And we'll see a bit more of that when we get into like actually programming the UI. Because to be honest, right here we're doing basically the same thing as you would in React, the React Solid library, not the React Solid. Sorry. We're doing the same thing as we would in the LDO Solid library, not what we. And we haven't touched on any of the specific stuff that comes in the Solid React library. Okay, so we're signing out box here. The following is basically the same thing. So person.following. Following resource. Oh, we gotta do this. There we go. And following resource. Okay, so now we've got the following, and the following type is going to be a collection shape type. So the ID is collection, and I think that we can leave it there, and then we can say person.following following is following. And then all we have to do is say transaction dataset dot commit to pod. And then if commit result dot is error, this is an await dot is error, then okay, and we don't need this return. Okay, so that is this function. Let's clean this up a little bit. This doesn't like this async. Okay, that's fine. So what we can do is just return new promise. Resolve. And this will clear up any kind of async problems that we have. We don't need to return the promise then. Or no new for side effects. Oh, thank you, linter.
Wait, can you use await in a function you pass to the promise
So
constructor?
yeah, it's use effect doesn't like asyncs for what I think are petty reasons. I mean, I could just go and install.
I mean, async function return promise. I don't think you need to wrap it in the promise because that's what async function will do.
Yeah,
it will just return promise.
But so use effect, its callback can't be an async function. And the reason for that is because technically this should return a callback function that gets triggered when this component unloads. But we don't need to do that here. So I can be lazy and just install the use async effect library, which is technically a little cheeky and bad to do, but and that will make all of our problems go away. And this will be, oh right, actually it's use async effect. And then we don't need this. We can just say async. And we don't need this side. Format. Cool. Let's get rid of this stuff we didn't need. Cool. And this function should be done, but let's just be sure that it's done. So sure. And we later on I'll clean this up, but we can say use prepare, and that's all I have to do inside React, and this will run whenever we have a change to the web ID. Oh crap, we need to build the login UI in order to actually test this. I mean, sure, I guess we could build a login UI. What do I want this login UI to? Well, I don't know. I've been going for about 2 hours now, so maybe I'll do that off screen. But Elf Pavlik, do you understand the ideas here? Oh man, I look really dark now. Did the lights turn off? I guess they did. Huh. Do you understand what's going on here?
Yeah, I believe so. Again, I initially started using just the LDO, and since Psi data instance, like the Psi application gives me data instances which already have fetched the data set, so I was just using the dataset core from those data instances to create LDO data sets and create LDO objects from that. Now I want to like plan how to change the Psi, maybe the application package, or just make a different package for that. It's very thin, the application one. That I will just return pretty much IRIs whenever I can and don't fetch the data set, and then from that use solid LDO solid data set to fetch all the data. The only kind of little nuance is that to get on the child instances, for example, when I have access to project and inherited access to tasks, then I need to fetch the project to find the task of that project, because I don't have access to all the tasks in the container in the data registration. So I cannot, I don't fetch all the tasks in the container. I first fetch the project, and then I fetch the tasks from that. And yeah, so again, I can do it because if I fetch project with LDO dataset, then I still like have references to the task through the predicate. But at the same time, there are some useful helpers, like for example, the access modes that are available from the data grant on the data instances. So I will need to rewrite it for the separate module, or just change the existing one, that I have them as a functions. So actually I can call a function, pass it maybe the LDO object, and then get the information that it's not in the data itself, because there's some contextual data that I'm including in data instances, but I need to find a different way to do it on the LDO object. So I started like with the LDO, and now I'm testing things with LDO solid. And again, in the long term, since we use Vue for some examples, I would like to write similar like you have for React, LDO Vue. But that's the future. Like I got a bit sidetracked into all the reactivity in Vue details, and then yeah, I decided, as I wrote on the chat, that I'll get back to this later. So for now, I just focus on the Psi and LDO part.
Got it. Yeah, I'm also excited to see what the Psi and LDO stuff turns out to be. But yeah, I think that think I will leave that here. We had a good 2 hours, and we got some coding done, and it was also nice to just talk with everyone.
Yeah.
Very good.
Actually, with LDO, solid LDO dataset, I think I can use create data just if I give it an IRI to create data even if it doesn't exist.
Yes. So actually, even if the data doesn't exist, you can use from subject still, and that will just give you an empty node.
Okay, so I can just from the dataset get from subject get the LDO object, but then what I pass later to commit that data, if I do change data on that, it will know exactly which name graph to use.
Yes. Right, because the change data function takes in a graph. Yeah.
Okay, and it deals like in case like if the subject IRI was with a fragment, it will know that strip the fragment for the graph name.
If the subject IRI was a fragment, what do you mean by fragment?
Like hash me whatever. Like we discussed it 2 weeks ago at the UIDX.
Right. So you would still need to tell it specifically, here are the graphs I want this to be written to. It doesn't automatically interpret that, hey, this data has a subject that has a hash, so it should be written to the like base IRI and path that doesn't contain the hash. You still need to explicitly say this is the named graph that you should be writing to. It's not that smart. And I don't know if it should be that smart. Yeah, I don't know if it should be that smart, because I don't know. I personally don't super agree with the idea of having the standard of like you can find this node that has a hash by going to the IRI minus the hash. Just because like I don't think that IDs should be the IDs for the data should be necessarily in the same place as the IDs for where to fetch that data, because a concept of a person could be spread out amongst a ton of different documents, and if I'm just going to say, hey, fetch this one document for to look at this person, then that's going to not bring back the data from all the other documents that might have information about this person.
Yeah, I agree with you, but at least the part that the the fragment is fragment of a document. So you know that this fragment is defined in this document because that's the part without fragments. I think it doesn't guarantee that all the description for like everything all the description of whatever it's denoted by that fragment, it's in that document, but you still know that this fragment is kind of in this document because that's the semantic of a fragment in the IRI.
Yeah,
but it doesn't actually.
I'm making the
kind of
argument that
curious because
it probably shouldn't be like that.
But I think maybe it even worked because the client doesn't send the fragment to the server. So if I would even don't tell write to this graph without fragment and it would create a graph name with a fragment, when it tries to make HTTP request, the HTTP client will just strip the fragment because it doesn't send, like a conformant client doesn't send fragments to the server. So I think probably it would even work without doing anything, just by the means of HTTP client taking care of not sending fragments.
Are you pointing out the fact that like I have write session.webid? That's what you're saying? You're saying like it's able to determine that. Yeah, so when it's making requests to the pod, it does strip fragments. Okay, actually, I thought you were talking about a completely different thing. But like you're asking, like the WebID has a hash after it, so
could have like
could
many people have
it does strip hashes when it does writes to pods.
But in a data set, it would keep it with the fragment.
You know what? It would keep it with the fragment. Maybe that's something to consider. Perhaps this is not a great idea. Because there you would still have named graphs. Actually, is it possible to have a named graph that doesn't have a fragment? If I might say that from LDO's perspective, no, it shouldn't be possible to have a named graph that has a fragment, because the graph is the document that it's being written to, and you don't differentiate.
I think at least LDO solids probably shouldn't allow graph names with a fragment. I think. Yeah, it's tricky because RDF allows it. There's no problem from RDF perspective, but I think from solid approach, you assume that the resource, like the graph, is the resource, like the document on the server. So that's how solid uses named graphs at this moment, at least. So I think probably in LDO solid, you wouldn't want to keep the fragments for the graph names.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Actually, that's probably a good thing to note.
I'm holding you from moving on with your evening.
No worries.
Good
I've got a
coding
chicken
session, and I look
next
forward
to me
to.
that I want to eat.
Okay. Okay.
I've been munching on fries,
appetit.
but I think that it would be a little bit too rude to chow down on a chicken sandwich on camera.
I think it's a good time to end the stream, and keep us posted if you plan to continue hacking on it live.
Yeah, definitely. Probably sometime next week. I'm traveling this weekend, but I will be back after that.
Okay.
Okay. So.
All right.
Solid LDO should not include fragments. Hey Charlie, what's up? On the named graph. Okay, so that'll remind me. Cool. All right. See you later, Elf Pavlik.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.